so as I've been going through Chronicles and the Kings and Samuel and just looking at the kings of Israel, and I came to this one that says, but not in the tombs of the kings. And I was like, Eddie, there's tombs of the kings in Israel. And I was like, wait a second, I've been there 3 times. You've been there. And I'm like, did you ever go to any of the tombs of the kings?
No.
No, and neither did I. And I thought, wait a second.
I did go to the tomb of the king.
Well, Jesus, yes.
Supposed where he was.
Garden of Gethsemane.
Yes.
Well, he loved going there.
Yes.
But I was thinking of the Old Testament kings.
Yes. When you went through Chronicles and it said he was a good king, he was a bad king, good, bad, good, bad, good, bad.
Yeah, but I started looking at the burial sites of where these kings are, and I began to take a lot of notes about where it says that these kings are buried. And I thought, we have a niece right now in Egypt. And, you look at the pyramids and they talk about the tombs of those kings and stuff. And
they were landmarks.
They're landmarks and kind of like this
historical landmarks where these people were buried.
Right. And so I was like, and it's not disputed for them. I mean, you go there and there they are. And there's these ancient
King Tut.
Yeah.
He was buried right there.
And so I thought about, wait a second, how come it doesn't seem that Israel
really
talking about the tombs of their kings?
Because then that would essentially
prove
it
possibly
it would prove that
that's their land.
Yeah, right? It would be just another way of saying, hey, by the way, right by the the wall of the city, of the old city, right there is David's tomb, and right there are the other king's tombs, right there, the good ones, right? Because the bad ones, they were just...
Well, you have to go and map it out. That's what I was doing.
Absolutely.
So he was catching on the mapping of this because it gets even deeper. So I'm in my devotions and I'm reading this and I'm reading that this king was buried here and this king was buried. But then I came to the one that said not buried in the king's tombs. So there was this specific place. And if I could we're going to go.
Let's do it.
Can we go through it more with you guys? So I'm excited.
Let's do it.
Let me just give you some of these. You guys can study it for yourself, but a lot of these comes from Chronicles. And so you have Asa, which is very interesting. On his death, he was buried
in his own tomb.
In his own tomb. He actually had his own tomb. So they're not all buried in the tombs of the kings. He was buried in his own tomb. And then you have...
That's Second Chronicles 16:14.
Yeah, okay. And then you have, there's so many. Like I said, I have this list of them, but just the ones that I felt really were interesting. Again, so he was not buried in the tombs of the kings. Second Chronicles 24:25 is Joash. And then you have, which I thought this was interesting, Uzziah, because Uzziah was the guy that got leprosy in his feet. Is that correct?
Wasn't he the king that went in to the temple and kings were not supposed to step foot in there? He wanted to make sacrifices.
Well, he got in trouble because he became a leper. Is that the king?
That's right. The priest told him, get out, get out.
Yeah, that's not a good place to be. But for his burial, I thought it was very interesting because his burial, it said in the field of the burial, which belongs to the king, because it was said that he was a leper. So it sounds like he's buried in the field. Not actually in the tomb.
In the tomb.
Not in the tomb, but in the field of the tombs.
That's right.
Well, this is what I'm just putting these together. You guys do your research on this. This could be really exciting. And then it says, which I liked on Hezekiah. Now, if you remember, after Solomon, the Israel of nations split into 2 kingdoms. That's why there's so many kings in this, right? You have Judah and you have Israel. And so I found fascinating is Hezekiah. Since Solomon days, Hezekiah was the king that came in and united both of them for Passover. And we're coming up to Passover right now. And I thought, oh, isn't this interesting? And so Hezekiah was the one, like I said, that kind of brought them back together for specifically Passover. And it said that in 2 Chronicles 32:30, I think, it said that he's buried in the upper tombs, which I thought this was really interesting because Hezekiah is also the one that built the pool and he redirected the water. Remember was it King Sennacherib that was coming up or something like that?
Yeah, the king of Assyria?
Yeah. And so he like closed off the springs and then navigated the water underneath.
The Gihon Springs?
Is it Gihon?
Gihon or Gihon?
Well, I've been to Israel.
I'm from the East Coast. I say Gihon, you say tomato.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
have you been under the Hezekiah's tunnel?
I have not.
Okay, so I've been under there where the waterway is. Yeah, I think I remember going there. So anyway, Hezekiah directed this water in a specific way. And it's interesting because it says that he's built in the upper tombs. And I thought that was interesting because I thought, well, does the waterway have anything to do with it? I don't know. So, and then Manasseh, it says that he was buried in his own house somewhere there. And more and more, you guys can go over. And then
Josiah was a great king.
Yes. And it said, where is he? Yes, he's buried in the tombs of his father, 2 Chronicles
35:24.
So, and it's interesting because then after that, you have one king that got taken away to Egypt. And then you have a couple kings that when Nebuchadnezzar...
Egypt or Babylon?
Egypt.
Okay.
There's one that said he was taken to Egypt.
Jehoiakim? Was that Jehoiakim?
No. I don't know how to say his name. But he's in there. You can look at him. He's right Chronicles. After. And then one of the Egypt, they changed his name. The king changed his name. Anyway, he got taken to Babylon. Mm-hmm. So, you guys, there's all these different places where these kings are buried. But I thought it was very interesting because as I was reading this, I was like, wait a second, Eddie. Like, there's these tombs of these kings. I would love to know where these tombs of these kings are. You know, wouldn't you? Because it's just like such an ancient hallmark. But as we were going through this, something else came and occurred to me, which I thought was super exciting. One of my grandpa's favorite thing was prophecy. And probably because he got married the same year that Israel became a nation in 1948. And that was probably the biggest prophetic fulfillment that we have had for, probably since Jesus, right? Raising again and stuff like that. But my grandpa was so excited about prophecy. And prophecy is so exciting. And so one of my grandpa's most favoriteest prophecies that he would talk over and over again was the time of the building when the
temple would be rebuilt.
Yeah, the time that the decree went forth. That's the exciting thing because what do we read next? We read, so you have Jeremiah getting the 70 years of Babylonian captivity. Mm-hmm. Daniel's almost done with that. And then Gabriel comes and tells them this whole entire thing, right?
Yeah.
Of what God's going to do.
From 70 years to 70 weeks.
70 weeks. But this is exciting because when it talks about the time going forth, that's going to be the Messiah. So
the countdown.
The countdown. Right out.
The day that Artaxerxes gives a decree.
What happens? Nehemiah, at this time, or in this special time, he's feeling really sad before the king he was in front of. And it says, I'm trying to find it, Nehemiah chapter 2. I'm going somewhere, guys. This has got really exciting in my devotion time, all these little nuggets. I think I missed my marker. Let's see, Nehemiah.
Let's see if I can find it for you. Let's see who gets there first. I got there. I got there first. I got there.
Okay,
Here,
Nehemiah chapter 2. No, you can read. It's probably better. I'm so
Okay.
excited. I lost my place.
And it says, and it came to pass in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was before him, that I took the wine and I gave it to the king. Now I had never been sad in the presence before the king. Therefore the king said to me, why is your face so sad, since you are not sick? This is nothing but sorrow of heart. Nehemiah responded, so I became dreadfully afraid, and I said to the king, may the king live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city, the place of my father's tombs, boom, there you go. The city, the place of my lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire.
Okay, so here I am thinking about
The city, the place of my father's tombs.
exactly.
Wow.
So here Nehemiah is
like
just about to get this decree. It goes on and he gets the decree to rebuild Jerusalem. And according to that calculation, my grandpa was saying that they did the math according to, this is my grandpa's Bible. So in Daniel chapter 9, 24, 27, you can read this. And it says, Sir Robert Anderson accounted that it was 173,880 days from the declaration of Artaxerxes, calculated to April 6, AD 32, which is the day that Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, fulfilling this prophecy of the 69 weeks that were going to come. And then it says that the Messiah would come, but then he would be cut off, but not for himself. So you have to understand something. And I got really, really excited about this, because when I have only heard, like with Nehemiah and that whole prophecy, it was because as Christians, we're looking at Jesus as the Messiah. And it's so exciting because it was like when that decree went forth, there was literally a timeline of dates, of actual days, until Jesus would ride triumphantly in on a donkey. Hosanna, Hosanna.
Hosanna, Hosanna.
Riding on a donkey, right?
Hosanna.
And that was
Hosanna.
Jesus showing forth that he is the Messiah. And as Christians, we believe that Jesus is the King. And so it was very interesting because I'm like, wow, but what did it say in there? Eddie read it and I was like, whoa, it's the tomb thing again. If it was so important for Nehemiah to talk to the king, and he said, why should not my face be sad when the city, the place of my father's tombs, lie in waste? And I thought, there's the tombs again. And I'm like, maybe this could be a key. Well, I went on to read in Nehemiah 3:16, and it says a little bit more about this. And it says, do you have it? 3:16?
I do. John
Okay.
3:16.
Nehemiah 3:16.
Nehemiah, the son of Azbuk, leader of the district of Beth Zur, made repairs as far as the place in front of the tombs of David, to the man-made pool, and as far as the house of the mighty.
House of the capital M mighty.
That's right.
So this, I was like, wait. It says the tomb or tombs of David to this man-made pool as far as the house of the mighty. Here Nehemiah goes back to repair the walls of Jerusalem, and he takes specific note of the kings of David, the tombs
Where to
of the
place
kings.
Wow.
And
right
I'm like,
there.
he's doing this repair here. And I'm like, wow, it was so important that he even came and did this repair right here. So I'm thinking, okay, so I know we have Jesus and the first coming of the Messiah. But I'm thinking, what is holding Israel back in the time calendar? Because
from possession, from taking possession, or coming together with peace.
well, if they have their king stuff, then maybe
at the city. It's
Yeah.
at the old city at Jerusalem.
Because like, if you guys have ever been to Israel, you know the Bible Institute, they're ready for their temple. They're ready to issue all this stuff, but there's this conflict on all this.
What's going to be the result?
What's going to be the result? Because this is what's so interesting to me. And this is why I love God's word and I love the prophecies and I love how current it is today. Because even in Daniel, so as he's praying, he gets this, and there's a little portion in 9:27 where it talks about the last week of Israel. So Daniel kind of understood the Messiah was coming in these 69 weeks, which are 7-year periods. But then there's this last week. What is this? And it talks about, in the middle of the week, there shall be an end of the sacrifice and offerings and of the abomination, which makes desolation. And so all of a sudden there's this time period, and then there's this gap, but then there's this 1 week left to be fulfilled of the nation of Israel as they are here on this earth before King Jesus comes back. And as you know, the Jews, which is different from the Christians, they're waiting for Messiah. They think it's his first time. So they're actually waiting for Messiah to come. And Daniel didn't understand this week. And if you read Daniel chapter 12, you're going to see that Daniel's wrestling with this because he doesn't understand. And it says, it talks about what is this?
Oh, when God says, when Daniel wants to know.
Yeah, Daniel wants to know.
Daniel's like, just tell me. So it's
okay,
12:7.
So, and it says that it shall be for a time, a times, and a half a time, which is exactly what it says in Revelation 12:4, a time, times, and half a time. So 3.5 year period right there. And it says, and when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all these things shall be fulfilled. And Daniel's like, what? He says, although I heard it, I didn't understand. And I said, my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And it's so funny because he said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end. Oh, no. And Daniel's like, oh, and then it goes on. You can read it again. And it says from the time of the daily sacrifice is taken away. So they have to have these daily sacrifices to be taken away, right? And it says, blessed of those who wait and comes to these days. And then, but I look what the last verse of Daniel is. Do you have
go
it?
your way until the end,
Uh-huh.
for you shall rest and will arise to your inheritance at the end of the days.
So what I love about this is that the Lord actually gives him a foreshadowing of the last week of Israel. And though he doesn't understand, he uses the same terminologies as in Revelation. And he says, go your way, you're going to rest. It's not for you to know. And then I thought, okay, so you have the 70 years of Jeremiah, you have the 70 weeks of Daniel, and 69 he kind of understands, but this last one he doesn't understand. But who does God give it to? Who does God give the revelation?
John the Revelator.
So what I love about this, and this is Old Testament, New Testament, just working so hand in hand perfectly together, John gets
the revelation.
Revelation. So isn't that exciting? So guys, it's really, to me, it all kind of like converged. And I thought, what if the proclamation of the rebuilding of the temple, because of us Christians, it showed us that Jesus riding on a donkey was Jesus is the king. But what if that little part that says, Nehemiah said, my father's tombs are lying in waste. What if that could be some significance of bringing in this last week where Israel will be finally get to build their temple, and that period is the Great Tribulation the Bible talks about.
That'll be the catalyst. That could be.
Could it be? And that's what we're sitting here going. We're just speculating.
Yeah,
but we're having fun.
But we know he's coming back.
We know he's coming back.
We know Jesus is coming back.
And here's the thing. Is because Israel just became a nation in 1948. This is their 77th year anniversary.
Well, you know what's also interesting, if I can add,
Yeah.
is in the book of Acts, in chapter 2 of the book of Acts, when Peter is preaching on the day of Pentecost, he's telling all the Jews that are there, hey, by the way, he says in 2:29, it says, "Men and brethren, let me speak freely to you of the patriarch David, that he is both dead and buried, and his tomb is with us to this day."
Oh, his tomb is with us to this day.
I mean, he's
Isn't that
preaching at the
interesting?
day of
Who is that?
Pentecost.
Peter?
That's Peter in the old city, in Jerusalem. And I wonder if he was even facing it or something, you know? Like,
Yeah, who knows?
who knows? But I mean, the fact that he's proclaiming, he's stating the fact that the tomb of our King David is within the city walls, or is right here within the city. So why don't they talk about these things? Is
don't know.
someone gonna just bring it up like, oh my gosh, it was right in front of us,
I don't know.
and we finally realize it? This is enough to say it's time to rebuild.
It's possible.
That would be kind of cool.
It would be, because I don't know, I always thought it would be like the Ark of the Covenant or something coming up and people going, okay, now it is. But what if it's actually the King's tombs? I don't know. Again, it's
But what I think is
exciting.
what I think is kind of interesting is that you're just going along with your devotion.
Yeah.
And you're just reading, and okay, the king, he died here, he buried
Yeah.
over here, he was a bad king, he wasn't able to get buried here, and then you just had this, wait, David's tomb is within the city walls. It's right there at the city. And I mean, that's just like a devotion. Those are the nuggets that we wake
Yeah.
up in the morning.
Amen.
And how God speaks to us.
Yeah.
Now, is there relevancy to the rebuilding of that? We don't know. We really don't know. But it's kind of fun because we know that Jesus says, your redemption draws nigh.
Right.
So be aware, be awake, live for that moment, right? Even as Peter finished.
Live as that moment can happen.
Live as that moment can
Yeah.
happen. Peter, 2 Peter, Paul, 2 Timothy. That's how they were like, you guys got to live like it's your last day on earth. Like.
Well, I think
Or the moment
there
for the
was
Lord,
that
or the moment for the
expectation
Lord, yeah.
that God was coming back at any time, and it says, how do you want to be found when he comes? What do you want to be doing?
Exactly.
How do you want Jesus to find you? Well, how would you encourage people to be ready?
Well, you stay prayed up. Watch. Jesus said, watch and pray. Use your gifts that God has given you. If you don't know them, ask them. Ask people to pray for you for those gifts. And just draw close to him. Wherever you're at with him, your walk, just say, Lord, strengthen me for today and help my grace to, help me just be flooded with more of your grace and know you more. Stay in his word ultimately through prayer and
Yeah, and I think it's interesting,
Stay tuned, have that relationship.
get in the Word, read the Word, find these nuggets out for yourself. They're so fun, when you're in that and just reading God's Word and he's speaking to you. And we love to share. Eddie will get a nugget and a word and encouragement for our family, and he'll share it with all of us. And this one we decided to share with you.
That's right.
So who knows?
Everything pertaining to life and
Yes.
godliness.
And is
Right in
it
here.
possible that the tombs of the kings have something to do with
Oh,
all this stuff?
that'd be crazy.
I don't know.
Wow. Hey, we'll see what happens.
I know. That's why I'm like, maybe.
I just remember when our daughter was reading through her devotion, and she just said, she read the word Jerusalem, and she goes, look at that. The USA is in the middle
center of
Jerusalem.
The word Jerusalem.
And I was like,
whoa.
whoa. And what happens 2 weeks later? The United States put their embassy right in the middle of Jerusalem.
So it's
kinda
exciting
cool.
times, guys.
It was kind of
and
cool.
It's exciting times, and who knows? We just thought this is kind of fun. Let's just throw it out there. I don't know.
Yeah.
And see what
Do
God
the research
does.
yourself.
Yeah.
See if God speaks to you on
Get in
it.
Chronicles. Oh man.
Yep.
It's just here you think, oh, I'm going through Chronicles. Oh, what could
What's
be
there?
there? It's a lot.
Anyways,
God bless you guys, and I hope you found this exciting as we did, because it's God's word and it's alive and well, and it's for every generation and speaking to us. Anyway, God bless you guys. Until next time.
take care.
Bye. In this day and age, you guys, I know there's a lot of people talking a lot of stuff, but I want to encourage you to get in the Word and read the Bible yourself. And if you need help, my grandpa does a great Bible teaching on Revelation.